President Trump's tweets dominated the headlines over the weekend as the fallout from the failure of Senate Republicans to pass a skinny repeal of the Affordable Care Act early Friday continued. The theme Trump went to the most during the weekend was pushing Senate Republican leaders to end the legislative filibuster, which requires 60 votes to end debate on most bills in the Senate. On Sunday, Trump urged Senate Republicans to go to 51 votes because the world is watching. In a string of tweets Saturday morning, Trump alleged 8 Democrats are allowed to totally control the Senate by blocking Republican priorities. He later called Republican senators total quitters if they decided to move away from health care reform now. In 2013, Trump criticized President Obama and then Majority Leader Harry Reid for ending the filibuster on lower court judicial appointments and some executive branch positions. Trump also threatened the health care of members of Congress and their staffers by promising to end the bailouts for lawmakers and insurance companies. For insurance companies, he was presumably referring to cost-sharing reductions payments, which go toward helping subsidize insurers for keeping costs low for low-income people. White House Counselor Kellyanne Conway said Sunday Trump would decide later this week whether to continue making those payments. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer urged Trump to stop playing politics with people's lives with his seemingly drawn-out decision-making process on the CSRs. White House Budget Director Mick Mulvaney said in an interview that health care remains the president's top priority and the Senate should not take up any other issue before repealing the Affordable Care Act. Health and Human Service Secretary Tom Price said Trump recognizes that letting Obamacare collapse isn't the right thing to do, but he will threaten it because it will force lawmakers to work harder on a deal. Meanwhile, Senator Susan Collins, one of the Republicans who killed the skinny repeal bill, told the Senate GOP it's time to go back to the drawing board on health care, and Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders is promising to introduce a single-payer health care bill soon. Trump also hit on a number of other topics. He ripped people who had been given credit for his electoral victory last year, instead saying they don't exist. Speculation kicked up about whether he was referring to White House Chief Strategist Steve Bannon or ousted Chief of Staff Reince Priebus. Also on Saturday, Trump criticized the Chinese for not doing more to stop North Korea from testing an intercontinental ballistic missile that was fired Friday. It was the second such test in a month, and it's believed the missile could pose a real danger to the mainland United States. The U.S. responded to that test with a test of its own of a missile defense system based in South Korea, which Pentagon officials said was successful. California Senator Dianne Feinstein, whose home state is now in range of North Korea's nuclear capabilities, said Kim Jong-un and his regime are a clear and present danger to the United States after Friday's test. American ambassador to the United Nations Nikki Haley denied that she'd asked for a meeting of the UN Security Council because she doesn't believe such a meeting would do any good. However, she did use Twitter to call on the Chinese to do more to counter North Korean aggression. The military said Sunday evening there was no threat to North America from the missile test and that authorities monitored it very closely. Trump was also dealing with the fallout from his Friday afternoon decision to fire former White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus and bring in former Marine General John Kelly as his replacement. Outgoing White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer called charges that the White House is becoming more militarized offensive and wrong. Representative Barbara Lee, Democrat California, was one of the lawmakers who made the charge against Trump's White House, and she said Sunday that Kelly's time in charge of the Department of Homeland Security shows he's an extremist. John Podesta, former campaign chairman for Hillary Clinton, said Kelly faces an uphill battle as the new chief of staff because he's going to have to get the president in line and disciplined first. That will likely be difficult, Podesta said. Trump's other new top staffer, White House Communications Director Anthony Scaramucci, is likely in his favor because Trump thinks Scaramucci sounds like him, said former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich. And a past campaign staffer, Corey Lewandowski, attempted to speak to Trump through a television interview Sunday to urge him to fire the head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau because he's going to run for governor in Ohio. Trump also took time to mull over whether Russia would have been working on his behalf during the 2016 presidential election, deciding he stood for things the Kremlin didn't want in a president, so they must have worked against his election. The intelligence community generally believes Russia interfered on behalf of Trump in the election. Speaking of the Russians, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said he hoped the bill passed by Congress strengthening sanctions on Russia would encourage the Kremlin to change its behavior. Instead, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced 755 American diplomatic staffers would need to leave Russia on Sunday and not to expect Russian-American relations would improve very much in the near term. That was an action that made good on a threat earlier in the day by Russia's deputy foreign minister that more retaliation could be coming against the U.S. Trump spent much of his day Sunday golfing at his club in Sterling, Virginia. It was his 43rd trip to one of his golf courses as president. Sticking overseas, London Mayor Sadiq Khan commented on his running transatlantic feud with Trump by saying, "We're not school children," and he wished Trump and his sons would stop tweeting at him so he could do his job. Vice President Mike Pence landed Sunday in Estonia, where he said his mission was to communicate to American allies in Eastern Europe that Trump and the United States stand with them as Russia tries to exert her influence. In the Senate, South Carolina Republican Senator Lindsey Graham warned Trump against moving Attorney General Jeff Sessions to the Department of Homeland Security, calling the move a bad idea. Senator Orrin Hatch, the Senate pro tempore and third in line for the presidency, said Trump was threatening his own presidency by attacking Sessions in the media and on Twitter. Former Vice President Joe Biden and retired Senator Joe Lieberman reportedly talked Graham's good buddy, Senator John McCain, into voting against the Republicans' skinny repeal of health care. Senator Jeff Flake said it's time for Republicans to work with Democrats on passing health care reform and other legislative priorities because the failure of skinny repeal shows what one-party governance looks like in the Senate. In the House, Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi said it's so unimportant if she ends up running for House Speaker if Democrats take back the lower chamber in 2018. She said she's focused on pushing the party's new agenda. Energy Secretary Rick Perry backed his boss' tweets banning transgender people from military service, saying he totally supports the ban. A poll says the majority of Americans disagree with the ban. Veteran journalist Carl Bernstein, who made his name uncovering the Watergate scandal that brought down President Nixon, said Trump is dangerous beyond any modern president. Trump's bullying of Sessions shows he's just a weak person's idea of what a strong person is, according to top political analyst on ABC Matthew Dowd. The Reverend Al Sharpton said Trump's comments on Friday to a group of police officers encouraging them not to take it easy on people they've arrested, which some say was a call for increased police violence, were reprehensible. Ohio Governor John Kasich, who had lobbied the Senate for months not to repeal the Affordable Care Act, called the failure of the skinny repeal bill on Friday a good thing. A Rice University history professor said on CNN Sunday that Trump is unfit for command after hiring Scaramucci because he's putting unqualified people in top roles. And finally, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie got in the face of a Chicago Cubs fan while attending a Milwaukee Brewers game at Miller Park Sunday because the fan was heckling him.